Hello, Facebookers. Welcome to the PR Week. This is Steve Barrett, Editor-in-Chief. We're about to kick off our weekly podcast. Good to be back. Been off on vacation for a week, and very enjoyable it was too, but it's great to be back in snowy New York City. I'm joined this week by Claudia Romo Edelman, who is going to talk about her podcast, Global GoalsCast, and work at the UN and previously at Davos. So welcome, Claudia. Great to have you here.
Thank you.
And we got Frank Washkuch here, our news editor and news director.
Thank you.
I think we talked about that previously, but congratulations again, and I hope you're enjoying your new role, Frank.
Yes.
It's good to have you working across both our business brands. So we're about to kick off. If you've got any comments or you want to ask a question, append it below, and please keep the comments nice, and hope you enjoy the podcast. Hello and welcome to the PR Week, PR Week's regular weekly roundup of everything that matters in the worlds of PR and communications. My name's Steve Barrett. I'm the Editor-in-Chief of PR Week. Going to guide you through the next 25, maybe 30 minutes of our weekly show with special guest Claudia Romo Edelman, who is the co-host of a new podcast called Global GoalsCast. Welcome, Claudia. How are you?
I'm great, Steve. Thank you so much for having me here.
Thanks for being enthusiastic.
Thank you. Just coming away.
Yeah, this is your second visit, actually. We had you on as a guest last year around Hispanicides with Manny Ruiz, who is the founder of that, and you were also the chair of that event again this year, aren't you?
Yeah, thank you for hooking me up the first year and then leaving me hanging there.
No, it's a great event, so we really enjoyed going down to that. And we got Frank Washkuch here, a news director of PR Week and MM&M. How are you, Frank?
I'm well, and thank you for that warm welcome.
It's always good to have you on board, Frank.
Thank you.
The safe hand on the tiller to keep us in line.
It's a very dangerous thought, right?
So, we're going to chat to Claudia about her podcast, and she was at Davos, and she's also got roles at the UN, so great experience, and looking forward to finding out more about what's going on there. We'll talk about the Super Bowl and the advertising. It was an interesting game, wasn't it? It was a fun game.
It was a fun game.
It's sad to see the Patriots lose, wasn't it, Frank?
You must have been terrified. Gutted.
I was in the Curacao, actually. It was the last night of my holiday, so...
Now, was the game on there?
It was, but
were
I
people
didn't
watching
think that politically it would be a good idea to spend the last night of our romantic holiday watching the Super Bowl.
I like how you term that political.
So I didn't actually watch the game. We'll talk about Tide Pods. People are eating them, apparently. I don't know why, but there you go. We'll reflect on Davos. We'll talk about PepsiCo and Lady Doritos, and we'll end with some financial news. Publicis is the first of the holding companies to come out with its full-year results, and we'll see what they say about the industry at the moment. But let's start with you, Claudia. We know you from being head of communications at Davos. We know you from special advisor at UNICEF and communications roles there. But you have recently launched a podcast called the Global GoalsCast. So tell us a little bit about that, and what are the aims and objectives of that product?
Thank you, and again, thank you so much. I did have my first interview about the Global GoalsCast with you, and I hope that this is going to be the beginning of a relationship in which I can talk to your audience about the value for brands of a platform like ours. First of all, I'm an absolute believer that podcast is going to grow. Like, the numbers that I see in not only in America are incredible, but the growth in other countries like Mexico, Europe, where I was just there for 2 weeks, is just going to rocket. And so I'm delighted that we picked up that as a channel, also because it's not touched by trust, while a number of media organizations in the Edelman Trust Barometer seem to be going down. Podcast is untouched because it's so intimate, it's so authentic that people don't relate that as a channel. So what we did, we created a podcast for the global goals, to talk about the global goals. So it took us 6 months and a lot of money to come up with the name, the Global GoalsCast, which is the podcast that talks about progress and the champions that are making a difference, whether they know that they belong to this master plan called the Global Goals or the Sustainable Development Goals or not, is irrelevant. Companies are trying to make an effort to make equal pay for women and men, and that actually belongs to the Global Goals. That's actually goal number 5. But the fact that there is not enough platforms to talk about those efforts, those champions, was evident. And so we launched this with the effort, one, to highlight progress, to connect the champions that are making a difference, and to give the audience, particularly millennials that are consuming with their beliefs and with their hearts, a reasonable amount of information, not only about the issue, but who is in which side of the equation, so that they can distinguish brands that are, doing an effort to advance the world and the issue that they care about, or others that should be. So we're talking about people that are making a difference and people that should be making a difference. We launched 2 weeks ago, a couple of days before the World Economic Forum.
So what sort of guests have you had so far?
Right. So we have 5 episodes so far, and we have people from will.i.am and Bill Gates and Rihanna, but also corporations, CEOs, but also all the stories are around a person, a hero. So in one of our episodes, there's Brenda, who's a girl who crossed the Rio Grande and escaped through in the back of a truck of, to go to California, and now is an engineer in Google. And surrounded here is will.i.am and Bill Gates talking about an issue like migration. But altogether, very proud because we got music from people like Peter Gabriel, Duran Duran, U2, and a number of musicians are knocking our doors to say, I want to be part of this. We have more than 50 partners, 12 United Nations agencies, more than 20 NGO partners that said, I want you to tell my story, and I want to use this as a resource to tell more. And now we have a great number of data partners that are giving us numbers and figures and facts and crunching them in a compelling way, because we in the tree hugging industry were not very good at doing a good communication job. And so by having
the tree hugging industry.
well, having data that is compelling, that you want to talk to your show off with your mother-in-law at night, is important. And having actions that you can take when you listen to big problems and you sound like that's too big. Well, no, because they're always actions. So Bono's daughter, as a fact, is our partner in actions. So every time to listen to an episode, you can immediately take action about the things that you can be doing, but also the actions, the behaviors that you can be doing, but also the bigger community. So very happy. 2 weeks ago, launched. We made it to the top chart. We were number 72. 3 days after launch, we made it to number 1 of our category on governments and organizations.
On iTunes?
In iTunes, yeah.
Yeah.
What did I say?
You didn't. So.
Exactly. On PRWeek. Exactly, on the top chart of PRWeek.
Well, listen, look, we love podcasts at PRWeek.
Right.
We've been doing the PRWeek for 5 years, probably more actually, Frank. So yeah, what is it about podcasts, do you think, that are... You mentioned the Edelman Trust Barometer. That was interesting to me because it showed a declining trust in the media, but more an increasing trust in journalists.
Right.
One, I didn't quite understand that. I didn't see how those two could go together.
You can. Come on.
Tell me.
Come on, you can. Look, people don't, and I can testify myself or even with my kids, they don't. I am disconnecting from news. All of a sudden, there's like a shutdown. There's too much. It's too messy, too noisy, too out there. And then
too opinionated.
Too detailed, too stupid in a way. As in, what's the latest tweet or how is that connected? So there's 50% of the world that doesn't read news anymore at all, and I can see that again.
Where's that
in my.
From?
That's actually the Edelman, but the Edelman Trust Barometer. But there's a differentiation between. What you look online, and I don't know anymore whether, and I again see it in my children, where they don't know whether the things that they are seeing is a result of their choices, as in I'm looking at the photos of my friends and, the things that I care about, or is Google trying actually to put an algorithm. So there is an increasing distrust or questioning of algorithms, and that comes on search and social. Whereas I think that you're going back to a principle, I have to go back to brands, to the principle, to the people that can, at least I can make some sense of trust. So I started to read more of the sources that I know at least have a better sense, although they are pressured by advertisement as well. Well, I can trust on that. So I don't necessarily think that media is up. I just think that from the downwards going, the fall that is so high, there's a distinction between brands and recognition, and having someone say, my name is Steve Barrett, and what I say you can be accountable for, and someone that you have no idea what is coming from, like search. And podcast is not touched by that.
Yeah, so what you're saying is that media, the term media includes platforms
Totally.
like Facebook, like Google,
Totally.
even though they claim they're not media
Yes.
platforms, and
Right.
they clearly are, but
Right.
they've used that to abdicate responsibility for their platforms in the past, and unlike media owners like ourselves who have to pay close attention to that. So it's a good thing that they're trying to do something about that finally. Talk about when you say music from you to Peter Gabriel, they're doing specific music for the Global GoalsCast.
Look, I think that
podcast?
there's two things that I am saying right now, and if it feels very similar to what I was saying in 2002, 2004, when I was like, this is gonna become bigger, and then I invited Jimmy Wales and Mark Zuckerberg to Davos as media, and they were like, you have to say you're a journalist, right? Because otherwise no one will understand what Wikipedia or Facebook is, or bloggers and so on. I think that podcasting right now is something where you are gonna see on the growth, but that's related to audio. I think that we're going to see increasingly more commute time where the sharing economy is going to bring you to not owning anything, and then everything is going to be exposed. You're going to have by far more time to listen to things and to see things. And I think that the video explosion has happened, and I think that we're at the beginning of the audio explosion that contains music and voice, and when you put it combined, is really powerful. So the kind of things that I'm seeing in my own podcast is that people like big brands, so friends like Peter Gabriel and Duran Duran are donating us music, but a number of other musicians are interested in composing for good, composing to get an audience that has that. But for example, there is another angle, which is on the podcast. We're having a lot of fun, by the way. I don't know whether you can tell, but we're having a lot of fun with this one. And we started a partnership with Spotify so that every time we have an episode, for example, education and girls, or migration, or climate change, we invite a surprising person, and in this case it's going to be a CEO, we could do it with Dow Jones or not, give us a playlist. So the CEO of Danone, what do you think are the 10 songs that for you represent climate change or water? Or, because it would be too obvious to put will.i.am to do a playlist, and I think that we want to get into that. And those are the kind of things that are getting an incredible response, more than from the people, from the CEOs. Yeah. They all want to, I'm getting a lot of reaction there.
So you're trying to make business accessible to younger people and get younger people involved, and get business involved with young people as well.
It's totally that. I think that when I said millennials are buying with their beliefs, it's not only millennials, it's consumers in general. I think that consumers are expecting brands to stand out and do more, and I think that brands are doing a lot, and they don't have enough platforms to tell that story. So if you put them together in a fun, fun, musical, compelling way, and tell a story where you're like, this is something that you care about, social justice, if you want to call them, with the brands that are doing, talking about the champions, and we do it in a compelling way, in a compelling medium, then you have a winning formula, I think.
Sounds great, and we will talk more about that during the podcast and catch up on Davos. It sounds really exciting, so we look forward to seeing how it develops, and anything to promote podcasts is good with us, because we love podcasts too, don't we, Frank?
We do.
Yes. Okay, let's talk about the Super Bowl and the advertising.
Exciting game.
First of all, it was an exciting game. What did you think of Tom Brady going off the pitch without shaking hands with his counterpart? That's really kind of bad sportsmanship.
I have to say, I didn't notice it when it happened, though. I didn't notice it amid the celebration.
Yeah.
And,
that whole meeting in the middle of the two QBs and the managers is like part of every game, isn't it?
It is,
He went sulking.
I was surprised to read it the next day, because he's been in the Super Bowl so many times, and he's lost them before. So, you would think he would kind of know the protocol, so to speak.
I've seen Patriots fans going on about how sporting they were in defeat, and then I'm thinking, well, Brady walks off the pitch without shaking hands with Nick Foles. Anyway, that's a side issue.
I thought you were on honeymoon, though.
Well, I've got my phone. I keep up on Twitter. Always on.
I totally got that.
I wasn't on honeymoon.
Right,
just to clear anything up there, I wasn't on honeymoon. Blimey. I've gone all faint for it. So let's talk about the advertising, Frank.
Yes, let's
get on to the
move
advertising.
on to that. So I think that there were a few clear winners. The NFL's ad starring the New York Giants, two of the New York Giants players, Eli Manning and Odell Beckham, who were not in the game, reenacting the I think it's called the lift scene from Dirty Dancing. If anybody knows what I'm
Time of my
talking about,
life.
yes. Yes.
Is Eli Manning still a Giants player?
Well, he is for right now.
Okay,
We'll
yeah,
check back in a couple of
Yeah.
weeks, and we might have more on that. But yeah, I think that was the gut buster of the night. I think that there were some other standout
What about
ads.
the Land
as well.
Rover? Sorry, I got the wrong truck. The Martin Luther King speech ad got a lot of...
A bit controversial, yeah. So I did.
reaction.
I was running our Twitter account that night, and I did a bit of a.
That's how I followed it, actually. I was Frank's tweets.
Well, I'm sorry to disappoint then. So we did a bit of an informal poll on what people thought about it, and it was almost unanimously negative.
It
That people thought it was just a poor use of something that historic and inspirational to sell trucks, basically.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that didn't go over as well.
I felt, and people seem to feel, that the brands had really picked up on social issues last year, and that
Right.
this year they made a massive effort to get away from that.
Right.
So was that one of the few ads that really did pick up on social issues?
It
The others were
was.
more fun and
And that might
normal
have
ads.
made it feel more out of place,
Yeah.
all things considered. Yeah.
But there was the other effort that started last year with advertisement on putting disabilities as the heroes, right? Like just like picking up on that resilience and as a role model, which I thought was continued this year.
Okay, yeah. I mean, because brands have had an interesting year, haven't they? They're in this new environment where they don't know when they're going to suddenly be thrust into the spotlight, whether they like it or not. If the president tweets about them or something, a social issue comes up, and so it almost feels like they've been battered around a bit for 12 to 18 months, and that they were, I don't know, trying to get back to a little bit of fun and to more engaging consumer style stuff. Have you ever eaten a Tide Pod?
No,
Have you ever felt like?
no,
eating
but
a
I
Tide
have put like a very clear restriction in my house for anybody to eat a Tide one.
I mean, what's this all about, Frank? They look like sweets or candy, and we did some stories on this, didn't we, a couple of weeks ago before this Super Bowl, because they advertised at the Super Bowl. This is a Procter & Gamble brand,
Right.
obviously.
And their advertising was very well received. There are a bunch of very short ads in which their bearded spokesman was getting in on other people's ads. It was a good series. It didn't really touch on Tide Pods in the Super Bowl, which is a bit of a whole other issue. But yeah, so proving.
Although there's a connection, because Gronkowski was doing some of the communication, wasn't he, around don't eat Tide Pods.
We'll have to see results on how effective he was in that. But it's this online craze in which proving that there's nothing millennials cannot ruin. I'm kidding. But in which kids are filming themselves eating Tide Pods and I guess spitting them out. I hope they're not
Well, I hope
going
so,
all the
'cause
way
they're
with it.
poisonous.
Yeah, and there is a bill in the New York State Legislature to basically force Tide to make them look less edible. Which good luck with that, I guess, because that's the appeal is part of the product, of course.
Is the
so-
appeal part of the product, or
Well-
is the appeal is just like doing something challenging? Like the ice bucket is not appealing; it's just like it was like.
No,
like
I just
Edelman.
mean for the pod itself.
Right.
It's just this little thing. It's not harmful looking. It doesn't look like it's something harmful to touch, anything like that. You could just throw it in the laundry. But yeah, it's getting a lot more attention in the past couple
Yeah, I
weeks.
think the brand has got to address this, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Because it's getting a little bit out of hand, and you might think, well, how stupid would anyone have to be to eat one of these? But then you.
But hey, kids these
But
days.
why would the brand be responsible?
Because it's their product, and it's they've made it look attractive in a certain way, I guess, and sort of almost. And now people are doing food or things that look like it, aren't they? And stuff like that. So that So they do have a responsibility,
All
I think,
right.
as the brand. But yeah, all right. Well, we'll see how they navigate around that.
But we should say they are, and this is from the Cincinnati Enquirer, which is really like their hometown
that's where
paper,
P&G is based.
So they're saying they're actually doubling down on the production of Tide Pods. You know,
Right,
they're not
so-
pulling away from it. They haven't changed the design that we know of, not recently anyway. They had in the past. So they're going full speed ahead with production.
Well,
of
that
it.
comes back to that whole story about is there any such thing as bad publicity? Because maybe maybe sales are way up. They've got loads of extra exposure from this, haven't they?
So interesting stat in here too. Unit dose laundry detergent is a $2 billion a year business for P&G.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
huge. Yeah.
Yeah, all right. Any other reflections on the Super Bowl and the ads? And
I'm happy for my neighbors and friends that I grew up with who are Philadelphia Eagles fans that they too can know what winning a Super Bowl feels like. For
it's a bit harsh on our former colleague Michael Shemesh, who's probably still getting over his hangover. Isn't he?
I wonder if he's at the parade, which is
He-
happening as
I think he was
as
in
we're recording.
50-50.
Was he?
According to Facebook, because those Philly fans, they know how to celebrate, don't they?
yes, they do. They do.
Is the fact that the game goes to the last minute, that's good for the advertisers, isn't it? Because the viewers stay watching, or is it worse because they are more engaged with the game?
Well, it's interesting because when I was younger, like in the 90s, for instance, there were a number of Super Bowls in a row that were blowouts. And the trend at the time began to be that
You had to get in the first half.
you had to get in the first half, and especially in the first quarter, in case the game got out of hand early. And then viewership would drop in the second half. But the last few have been close. I'm trying to think of the last one that was really a rout, which was, I think, when Seattle won 4 years ago. The last one in New York.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And yeah, it seems like it's a safer prospect to actually advertise in the second half nowadays.
Any thoughts on the halftime show, Frank? You a big Timberlake fan?
No, I was cooking hot wings and eating them and washing
I
my
loved
hands
it.
off.
Did you?
I
Yeah.
loved it. Last year I was in the Super Bowl, and as much as I love Lady Gaga's show, I just thought that was just superb. Yeah.
It didn't get great reviews though. A
No,
lot
but
of,
I love
people
it.
thought
I
it was
know.
too safe, I think,
Yeah.
or something like
I
that.
know,
so.
but I loved it. I
Yeah.
know. I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's a great sporting event. I mean, I don't want to point this. Well, I'm going to point this out. They call it the World Championship, Frank.
Yes.
But there's only teams from the United States that take part. How does that work?
Well, there's not really another professional football league that plays with the same rules.
Right.
Canadian football has slightly different rules, so I think it's accurate to say it's the World Championship of
Do you think so?
that
Only
style
one
of
country's
football.
playing it. It's not really a
Well,
global sport.
there are some players from other countries, you know,
Sure.
the odd Canadian.
I was
and-
just thinking, this summer we've
Something
got
like that.
We've got the real global event in Russia, the
Yeah.
World Cup of soccer. Or
well,
football, as
other
they call
people
it.
do. We Americans
Well,
do.
yeah, and that attracts, I think, an audience 10 times larger than the Super Bowl, the so-called World Championship
Yeah.
of football.
I'm looking forward to it for what it's worth.
Okay.
So,
All right, I'll stop digging into that.
It's okay.
hole. Let's talk about Davos, or as we sometimes call it hilariously in the newsroom, Davos, but a collection of Daves. No, Claudia, you're intimately knowledgeable about this. You were head of communications at Davos, the World Economic Forum, for some years, and you at the UN you've engaged a lot. So. You were there this year. What were the trends you were seeing amongst business leaders and compared to previous years?
Not only that, I celebrated my 20th
20.
Davos.
Wow. So you've
This
seen
year,
the
yes.
story really unfold and the growth of the event.
The growth or the change,
Yeah.
like in a way. Look, my sense is, particularly compared to last year, the optimism. There was a dichotomy, like complete bipolarization, if you want, of the narrative. On the one hand, the optimism, the growth, the markets, the economy, the unemployment, the numbers, and everybody was like totally into that. Like, yes, we can do it, and we're starting to, to celebrate the taste of, being up. And on the other hand, there was a sense of, wait a second, does that come with the price of nationalism retracting and everybody's going to be on their own? And so there was a global national conversation that was very strong. Davos started with Modi the Indian Prime Minister and closing with Trump. And in the middle of the sandwich, you had 6 of the G7 heads of state, one longer and more, worldly than the other. I think that the politicians came to Davos, which in a very, very new etiquette. As in, like in previous years, I think that they used that platform to talk about their national policies. And it was, this time around, it was a little bit like too hot, airy, and everybody was super well behaved. In the past, politicians do actually take the microphone to express their anger, and everybody was like super behaved. I think that President Trump disappointed a number of people that were expecting a show. Finally, they were able to come and see something.
Well, he stayed on script, didn't he?
He stayed on script. A number of new things for me. The incredible amount of conversations about facts and the trend towards against technology. Technology groups, Facebook and Google probably had their butts really sore after like everybody slapping them from one way or the other. Like, come on here, thing, spanking, like public spanking. And it was...
This is more for the people watching on Facebook Live, the accompanying graphics here.
But altogether, it was very much about like, you have to take responsibility about what you're doing. And the entire fake news was merged with the problem of fake news is that people don't believe in real news anymore, and the blame was put on them and the responsibility of bringing facts. And I think that the second large conversation that I felt was not only Bitcoin and blockchain, I think that was the conversation of Davos, but about gender. Having for the first time the chairwoman of the World Economic Forum, all women. We got like incredible access, for example, because we're a female-led podcast, but it came with a little bit of, is this going to backlash? Like, for example, people didn't want to have one-on-one meetings with me, men, because there was a sense of like, everything has to be. So there was a
and
potential.
There's still very few female CEOs.
Exactly.
Let's face it.
Exactly.
There aren't that
Exactly.
many. Were Facebook and Google there?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
They were engaging, and were they surprised at the kick knockbacks they were getting? Were they reacting? Were they saying we need to do better? How was that rolling out?
I think that there was a distinction for me between the reaction of Facebook and Google, and in a way, I think that, for example, I went to a number of events where the rule was like, please don't attack the company. This is about like conversation about how platforms can engage in more human rights issues, and the rule was like, please don't attack Facebook. But I think that Google was a bit more engaging and a bit more advanced in trying to get this out of the way, but. The representation was at the highest level for both companies. Well, Mark Zuckerberg didn't come, but Sundar did. But I don't know necessarily that they have seen the end of the road when it comes to what they can do, what they can absorb it, and whether whether they were coming to Davos in a way to stop like the snowball.
So I've heard a lot of people say that Davos is a little bit like the Cannes of the chief communications officer, so they're there with the CEOs in force, in a way they're probably not in Cannes. Why should companies be in Davos, and what's the secret for a chief communications officer of getting the most out of Davos?
All right, so I actually did a Facebook Live very similar to about podcasters. So I'd like, what's the secret about podcasters in Davos? Because I think that organizations like the World Economic Forum, they are making an effort in trying to procure for podcasters, but they haven't figured it out, which is something I want to take on with you. By the way, in Cannes, you engage me on Hispanic sites. I'm going to get you for Cannes so that we do something for podcasters. But I think that it is valuable for a CEO to be surrounded by like-minded, high-level people that have the same, interest in geographies, but come from different backgrounds. So it's like a strange bedfellow meeting within 4 days that can save you an incredible amount of traveling all around the world. I think that the sessions this year were by far more attended than in the past, where people go and network. I love the World Economic Forum, by the way, but
and it has to be the CEO, isn't it? They won't let a more junior executive go.
And I think that this year I felt it was by far more organized for the chief communication officers or the chief marketing officers, because they don't have access at the same level as the CEOs unless you pay an incredible amount of money. But because the side events are a bit more organized, it's easier to have a network of CMOs or a network of CCOs. But that would be a market opportunity for whomever that is, that is willing to take it. As in, like, how do we actually make this program a bit more interesting for CCOs? That could be, beneficial.
Yeah, very much so. And finally, is it a non-profit, the World Economic, or is it a profit-making?
No, it is a non-for-profit, and it's an international organization. Recognized as an international organization briefly, but what they have done is grow an incredible amount through the investment that they have, but they still are non-for-profit, Swiss non-for-profit.
So what happens to the monies that are made then?
They're invested. They're invested they have, I think by now, the largest amount of competitiveness reports in the world, be gender, travel and travel and tourism and so on. So they are becoming a very important think tank, a very important event organization, a very important catalyst. So they have action, nerdy part through the reports, and then also activities for. Yeah.
Okay, we're running out of time, so let's quickly move on to Lady Doritos and PepsiCo. Frank, what's that all about?
So that was not the greatest executive interview in the world when Indra Nooyi, the CEO of PepsiCo, was on a few days ago, in which she described how women supposedly, according to her, not me, like to eat Doritos differently than men do. There was a very swift and harsh reaction on Twitter, and Doritos put out a statement, I think probably 24 hours later, saying that they're not making a special quote-unquote lady Doritos, and Doritos are for everyone.
Yeah, well, I don't really get that. There was suggestion that people took from that they were going to create a product slightly different for
Correct.
Women. Yeah.
Yes, a less crunchy.
You're being very careful with your words here, aren't you, Frank?
I am.
We're in a stay quiet and watch you squirm.
Well, let me read the actual quote.
Just sticking to the facts.
From
Frank's sticking to the
Ms.
facts.
Nooyi, which was, they don't like to crunch too loudly in public, and they don't lick their fingers generously, and they don't like to pour the little broken pieces and the flavor into their mouths, which I do, to be fair. So, but to each their own.
Claudia, do you eat Doritos?
I do think that there's a value in having, for example, a bit more nutritious snacks, like this tortilla, new nutrition port. But I'm not sure it's related to leaving crumbs or the licking my fingers. But I don't eat Doritos. Yeah.
Okay. We'll leave that one in the bag. Let's finish on financial results. Publicis is the first holding company to release.
Yes, they're number one.
They don't break out PR, but it's an indication, isn't it, of how last year was. Not the greatest of years, I don't think.
No, and it wasn't. And that showed up in the results that Publicis announced. So for the full year, they're down 0.4% to about $12 billion for the year. However, they had a very good performance in the UK and a strong second half with two revenue increases in North America of about 3% and 4% in the last two quarters. So some bright spots, but overall not a great year for the holding company.
From a PR point of view, they're selling that Chinese agency they bought called Jenny Digi, which they made a big song and dance about when they acquired it and how it was going to take them to another level in Asia. Now they're selling it. What do you make of that?
Well, that's interesting, and I think that's something we're going to look more into, because that's like you said, it was made a big deal out of when it happened. So interesting to see their reasons for it. They did not go into a lot of detail about it on the earnings call.
Yeah, we're going into agency business reports time of year, so we'll be doing loads of content around that, and we're convening an agency summit actually with a bunch of CEOs, so we're looking forward to that. All right, we're nearly done. I wanted to make a big shout out to the man behind the dials, Perry Simpson. How you doing, Perry?
Good. You probably can't hear me, but I'm good.
Yeah. Perry did a great video. If you haven't seen it, please check it out. It's on PRWeek.com, called What It's Like to Be Black and Working in PR. Mini documentary, Perry, that you put together over the past few months. It's got a great reaction, hasn't it? And really has stimulated some conversations.
Yeah. Monitoring Twitter is pretty good to see that people were responsive to the video and they like it.
Yeah, and Facebook, I think there were something like it's one of the biggest articles we've ever had on Facebook in terms of reaction, if not the biggest. So glad. It was a great film. I really do recommend you check it out. And Perry's about to publish a blog to run alongside it, and we hope this can actually move from conversation to actions, because it's clear if you watch this video there's still a long way to go in terms of diversity, especially in the sort of PR agency areas. So well done, Perry, great job on that. Just a couple of customer service announcements. The PR Week US Awards take place in New York on March the 15th, so really hope to see you there. It's the Oscars of the PR industry, as you know, the most prestigious awards out there. Our Global Awards, they're in London on May the 15th. We've had a record number of entries for that, so very excited about that as well. And don't forget our Brand Film Festival, the third year for that in New York on May the 3rd. That will profile the best in cinematic storytelling on behalf of brands, and some really great work going to be profiled there. We are taking our forms, nominations for the Agency Business Report, so if your agency hasn't got your form filled out yet, please get on that, or contact us and we'll send you the details. We're also doing a survey on sexual harassment in the PR industry, and we're about to close that one up. If you haven't already taken it, please do, and we will be producing some content on that over the next couple of weeks. But that's all we got time for. Claudia, it's been fantastic. How do people get in touch with you if they want to find out more about Global GoalsCast, or want to be a guest, or get their CEO on? How do they do that?
Thank you so much. So globalgoalscast.org, and my email is Claudia, Claudia, at weareallhuman.org.
And We're All Human is the sort of umbrella?
The foundation, yeah, the skeleton that produces the podcast.
Okay, well, good luck with it.
Thank you.
Looking forward to anything to promote podcasts. We're all about that here. So, yeah, thanks for being a guest. Frank, always a pleasure, my friend.
Of course.
We got through
Thanks
it again.
for having me on.
It's always a pleasure. And Perry, thank you, and we'll see you next time on the PR Week.